welcome to the Crafty View. I'm Diane Williams, the host for the show, and today I am at Village Beads because I'm here to meet Jim Bankston and his wife. They work with Bankston Glassworks, and we're going to learn all about what they do today. Thank you. Hello, is it Jim and Crawford?
That's
Hi.
right. Good morning.
Oh, good morning. So nice to meet you both, and I'm excited to learn what you do with glass.
I'm excited to show everybody.
So tell us, what is it that you do with glass?
Well, what I like to do is flamework glass, which means that I'm working with the glass while it's molten, and then in a smaller torch, and then my work goes into the kiln to be annealed. Unlike, say, stained glass, where you work with the glass when it's cold.
Now, how did you get into this? When did you start?
Well, you know, my mom and I have owned the bead store for 21 years now. And when we were first getting started, I found out that there was a class on lamp working. They had a teacher from out of state come in and teach at the Hot Arts Colony at Tougaloo. And I thought, well, if somebody's teaching a class on how to make beads, we have to be there. And so we both took the class. There were several other guild members there. Several other people there have become guild members. I was not a guild member when I first got started, obviously. And so there are quite a few faces from that class that are either current or past members.
Okay, and
So
somehow you found your niche
it
in
was
all of
just
this.
luck and fate and whatever. It was there.
You know, sometimes when people start out with a craft, they go, oh, this is too expensive. Oh, how am I going to find what I need to create what I'm doing? What kind of challenges did you encounter?
Well, at the very beginning, a lot of the challenges were similar to when we first started the bead store. You know, there was not really there weren't really any local resources, and of course, at that time, we were not purchasing as much on the internet, and so it was a little bit harder to find materials. But I figured it out, and at that time, I was still using catalogs and ordering things over the phone, and boy, things sure have changed since then.
That is true. So show us around and tell us a little bit more about the work itself.
Sure. This is my small space in the store here, and I've got some of the things that I've made here from pendants and rings. There's certainly some beads, spinning tops. I'm actually don't have any marbles to show right now. But there are some pictures on my Facebook page. But I enjoy making those items. I enjoy making the small bottles and the tops. There's always something different to do or a different technique to try, and I think that's what keeps me coming back.
How do you and your wife work together in this endeavor?
Well, she actually does some glass work herself, but primarily she's doing the design work with our necklaces and our jewelry. And so typically what we do is try to use the only glass that goes into any of our designs typically is what we make. And so she picks and designs picks natural stones to do the designs of the necklaces.
Yeah, I just want to, I like natural things. I like wood and pearls and stones, and I think that finding the right colors is actually a little bit more challenging than you would think. But finding the right colors and patterns to really accentuate the bead and still keep it the focal point. You know, you can have sparkly things and have them detract from your center, but I want to highlight it. That's my goal.
And you know, what suggestions would you give someone that wants to get into bead making, necklaces, that sort of thing?
Well, we all have different ways of making things. I'm driven by the beads themselves. Like, I cannot plan anything ahead of time. I have to come in and find the beads, and this sounds really corny, but it's like the certain beads talk to me kind of and tell me what to do, and then other people have to plan it out. And if I plan it out, it never goes like I plan. But really and truly looking around, looking at jewelry that you see on Pinterest or in stores, coming and looking at the beads. Sometimes people come in and look and then come back the next day. because they had to mull over what they wanted to do. But really and truly, playing with it, just playing with it is the best way to get started.
And we're both really inspired with natural materials.
Yes.
And having a lot of those things here in the store, you know, I may be looking at a stone or a pearl or even a wood or a bone bead, and that may lead me to thinking about what I can do with glass next, or what type of pattern or what type of color I can try. One of the things that I've done is I also have some lapidary equipment and have done some cutting and polishing of stones, just dabbling. But I had this great idea, and I tried to make basically my own geode out of glass. So I made these little glass eggs, and then I treated them just like I would a stone. And so I sliced them open, or like in this one, in case of this one, I faceted that roughly, and then polished it. So
is that what it looks like inside naturally?
This, yeah, I mean, I made this.
Wow.
So
Really
but
cool.
my inspiration point was a geode,
Right.
or just lapidary work in general and cutting stones. And so I wanted to do something like that with the glass, but I realized quickly that that's one of those labor of love projects, because it takes so much time. I don't think I could ever charge enough for it to be worth doing.
Well, that is fabulous. I have one more question about these necklaces. And for a novice person that wants to get into something like this, the question, I think one of the first questions outside of what type of bead should I use would be, how do I know how long or how short to make the necklace?
Well, you can find charts online that tell you about different necklines, but in all honesty, I think we each like different things, and I don't really follow a lot of guidelines anyway. Just kind of come in and make it, and honestly, this is going to sound stupid, hold it up in front of the mirror.
I love
Some
your
people
style.
like chokers, some people like long. If I wear long things, I break them because they get caught in drawers. But it's a personal preference. It really and truly is, and I know that doesn't answer your question, but it's a personal preference.
It does, because looking at you, I think that length on your necklace is the perfect length.
Well, one of the things, I will say this, that I like to do when I make necklaces, this one is chain, and so I can really make it shorter or longer. And so when I make necklaces, for me, I always add maybe 1 inch to 2 inches of chain at the back, so I can have an adjustable length.
Nice. Very nice. Jim, tell us some more. Show us around your studio.
Sure.
And people can come over here to Village Beads on
Absolutely.
Highway 51 and School Street in this little shopping center.
We're close to the Guild, not far away.
Not far away from the Guild, so it could be a day trip. Go to the Guild on Rice Road and then stop by here. Okay.
Right. And if I'm not currently on the torch, it doesn't take a whole lot of motivation. You know, if I feel like I'm having to wait on a customer to do it, I'll be glad to demo most any time.
Look at this equipment that he's using. It's mighty powerful looking over here. Let's talk about it.
Well, I started out with a small Burnout Kiln that I was using for precious metal clay around 99 and 2000, and once I evolved into doing more glass work, I wanted a different one with a door, and so the one that here I've got has a small door, so I can put, after I make the bead, so like say I have a mandrel like this one, and then I wrap I coat it first with this bead release, which is kind of like slip. And then I wrap the glass around it, and then I put it into the kiln. So I pop the door open and slide it in there, so then it can be evenly heated for a certain amount of time, and then come down. I ramp down really slowly, and that just helps to strengthen the glass and make it less breakable.
So you use a kiln just like a ceramic artist would use, a clay artist. You use it, but it's a different type of kiln.
Right, and tiny. You couldn't fit very many plates in there.
That's right. But is there a platform? I see there's something in there.
That is just a piece of a fire brick, and honestly, some of the things when I'm, say, doing a marble or something like that, I have to be careful that when I put it in there, it doesn't come rolling out. 'Cause
Oh.
it's really, really hot.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So let's talk about some of this equipment here, just
Well,
basic.
This mess on this table is this is a flat lapidary wheel. So this is a for cutting and polishing. I've got 5 different wheels that go in here, from rough cut to finer, and for like final polish. And this is what sometimes I will cut glass with, and I've got this is a trim saw for cutting slices, and I do some stuff with that, but this is kind of more just for fun. It is a whole nother level of work to add into a piece once you've spent the time making it in the torch, and then to also then cut and polish. You have to, like I said, it has to be almost a labor of love to do that. So primarily what I'm doing is just flame work and then into the kiln.
Okay. Are you familiar with grants from the Mississippi Arts Commission?
I am.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've never gotten one or applied for one.
Well, that's a suggestion I would have for you, because they offer many grants, and I'm saying this for everyone, of up to $500 as a reimbursable expense to purchase supplies, to go to a workshop or conference to learn more about what you do, that sort of thing, or to enhance your promotional and marketing materials. Thought you'd want to know about that. So check them
that's
out.
great.
Yeah. So tell us some more. What else? Oh, look at all of this here.
Well, these are some of the things that we sell in the store, but certainly things that I draw inspiration from. Texture, color. I love natural materials.
So I want to ask a silly question.
Okay.
You could bop me in the head if you'd like. But sometimes some artists use polymer clay to create jewelry and stones, and
Sure.
I think it's a great way for children to learn to do the craft. Do you ever teach anything like that?
We don't do polymer clay, and I have played with it, but honestly, it's too stiff and my hands don't like it. He has taught me how to do some lamp work, and he really, really, really wants to teach our daughter how to do it. And she keeps saying she wants to do it, but she's scared of getting burned, because she has gotten burned. But for kids, he'll teach adults, but this is too much for kids. He's
I
demoed
understand.
for
But
kids.
now, I haven't taught in quite a while. It's something that we might get back to. I've taught some beginner classes at the Craft Center, and enjoyed it quite a bit. But as you can imagine, if you get a room full of people and a room full of torches going all at once,
Right.
it's a bit stressful.
Oh yeah, the torch
watching
is the
everybody.
issue. I understand.
But one of the things that makes this good, particularly for field trips at the Craft Center, is, and he didn't tell you this, and I think this is one of the reasons he likes it so much too, is there's so much science involved in this,
Nice.
in terms of chemistry and having to know the different types of glass and all of their chemical properties, and then the history of it.
Thermal expansion and what's
yes.
happening in the kiln when it's being annealed.
And I have marbles on my desk, and I've shown them to my students because I'm a teacher. And then that gets into whole conversations about how glass is made in general, and sand and silica. And there's so much science behind it that it's just fun to talk about.
Yeah,
that way.
adults like to hear about those things as well.
Yeah.
Nice.
Pre-pandemic, we have done quite a few of those field trip demos over the years at the Craft Center. It's something I've always enjoyed doing.
Okay, what's our next step here? What are you going to show us?
Well, I'll be glad to do a demo, and I guess we could do maybe a simple pendant, or I don't know, what sounds good to you?
That all sounds good to me. Let's get started.
Growing up, I've always kind of felt like art really wasn't for me, because I was not great at drawing. I was a bit older when I found glass, and when I did, it opened up so many new possibilities for me, and things that I think I had kind of, I had a lot to say that I had not said, and I think that getting to a point where I could feel like I could be a participant in fine craft or art, or even consider myself an artist, was a big, long leap. But it was really special. And one of the people that was really instrumental in helping me get to that point and also to make it to the Craft Center was George Berry. We used to do the Belhaven Market quite a bit when I first got started and before I joined the guild, and he was out there just about every Saturday, and he would come around and he would talk to everyone about their work, and he was very encouraging, and that Belhaven Market ended up being like an incubator for the guild. And I think probably 7 out of 10 vendors out there are all guild members
Or were
now.
at one point, yeah.
Or were at one point, yeah. And so that was one of the when I first got started, my great encouragements, you know.
Yeah, he encouraged me as well. Yeah, he helped me understand how to set up my booth and how to get repeat customers, because he would get customers, generations of customers.
I have things of his that I bought when I was little to give as gifts, because I mean, this is not what I expected my life to be. I grew up, my mom was in the Craftsmen's Guild when I was young, and my stepmother's also in the Craftsmen's Guild now, and this is not what I expected my life to be. But we have some of George's things that I gave my grandparents when I was little.
Yeah, and that's the kind of crafts person he was. Very inspiring to the average man and to the creative person as well.
Yes, very.
And that's, you know, one of the reasons I've always enjoyed doing those field trips for the kids too, is that it is a chance to share the idea of the Craftsmen's Guild and the idea of fine craft with these students. A lot of them are not aware. And, you know, there are little kids out there that think art may not be for them because they're not great at drawing.
Right.
And there are a lot of other mediums and a lot of other techniques and a lot of other ways to express yourself.
Well, I won't have him again next year, but I had a student for 3 years who's going into the 7th grade next year who he got to see, was it Lyle Wynn out there at the Craft Center?
Yes.
And he has this little kid, when he was in 4th grade, he had his own forge. And
He's
going
a
to see
blacksmith,
Lyle Wynn was like, he told me repeatedly that was the best day of his life.
Yes.
Because he got to see a real blacksmith.
So it's wonderful to be inspired by a woodworker in George Berry, and then Lyle Wynn, who forges this metal in such an incredible way. My gosh, that's fabulous.
Well, and I have to at least mention Susan Ford too, because she really took me under her wing at first. And she was in, you know, when I first got started, was at a class at Tougaloo in the summer art colony, and she was in that class.
And what's her craft? Is it
glass.
a glass artist as well?
She's blue glass.
Mm-hmm.
And then now she does lamp work, but she's moved to one of the Carolinas, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, you know, everyone in the guild is always so open and accepting and welcoming to us, especially all the other glass artists, but everyone. And it just, you know, it feels good to be part of a group that is trying to educate and promote fine craft in Mississippi.
Yes. Let's take a look at some of the things that you're going to demonstrate for us. This looks interesting.
Yeah. Well, what I'm doing right now is kind of warming the glass up slowly so that it doesn't shock and pop or shatter. And it just takes a few minutes. You got to bring it up slowly. The torch itself is super, super hot. And, you know, once you get going with glass, you have to kind of constantly keep it moving. So a lot of times I feel like, you know, the thing where can you pat your head and rub your stomach at the same time?
Yes.
Kind of thing. It feels like doing 2 things at once sometimes, or 3 things.
So you have these, what looks like to me, glass sticks.
Right, that's exactly right.
And each one is different?
Right, these are 2 different colors. And so what I'm going to do is a setup to make a small cane. And a cane is just one of the ways to mix colors. And in fact, you know, a lot of the techniques that we use in candy making are also used in glasswork. And so this is the same way that a confectioner or a candy maker, whatever that's called, would make candy canes.
Oh.
And they pull and twist and create the candy cane, but we're doing it with glass. And then I'm going to use that piece. Well, I'm not making exactly a candy cane, but I'm going to use this piece will then be a focal part of the design.
So you're just mixing the colors right now.
Right. And you know, with the softer glass, it goes a good bit more quickly. With the borosilicate glass, it's a much higher temperature, and so it moves more like taffy. It takes a lot of heat for it to get to a point where it moves very quickly, and so it takes and then of course, you know, getting it that hot, if you don't have the right flame environment or you get it too hot, you can damage the color, or you can get bubbles, and you can, you know, there are all kinds of things that can go awry.
Wow, a lot of things to think about.
It is, but you know, you kind of hypnotize yourself with this torch. You start staring at it and then lose track of an hour or two. But I think any artist, when you're in the middle of a project, that's kind of like being in the zone. That's where you want to be.
Oh, yeah.
I've got a variety of different tools that I use for shaping, from things that are made from steel or brass to a lot of the tools that I use are made from a high density graphite material, and the glass, even at great temperature, won't stick to that. But with the metal tools, you have to be careful. If they get too hot, they'll stick, and so you have to keep the tool cooled off, or at least cooler than the glass.
So this process that you're using right now, I see that it's taking a little bit of time. And what scientifically is happening there? Is slowly melting?
We're just slowly melting, and we're building up heat. The glass will hold a certain amount of heat, and it takes just time and judgment to get to a point where you can tell how hot it is, which controls the movement. So I know how it's going to move by how hot it is, and so like we're getting hotter. So if I take it out now, you can see that it's starting to get smooth. And turn into its own little blob, and then we'll be able to manipulate it. But you know, the hotter it is, the more molten it is, the faster it moves, and all those are things you have to consider if you're pulling out a piece or
Yes. And I bet you know just how hot that fire is right now. In some areas it's blue, and then it's bright yellow and red.
Right. Well, and there are certainly different, you know, different points within the flame, and sometimes I'll work adjacent or just to the side of the flame, and so it's just like cooking. You know where the hot spot in your oven is usually, and it just takes time, and you learn different torches and different materials. Now I'm going to pull this out.
Ooh. Cool.
Okay. Now this piece is going to end up being the very front. This will be the piece that's facing us this way when we make our pendant.
Okay.
So sometimes you have to work a little upside down and backwards.
I'm starting to see some multicolors there.
And I'm really trying to make an effort to keep it fairly centered because it can get away from you quickly, especially when it gets hot.
I know you work with, you turn these into stones that could be necklaces, earrings, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever thought of light switch pullers? You know, they would be beautiful.
Well, you know, I have dabbled a little bit and see a lot of potential in making knobs for drawers.
Oh, nice.
A lot of people, you know, if I can make a decorative drawer pull or a knob for a drawer, kind of like the wooden ones on here, but do that with glass, I think that'd be pretty fun. And I've done some experimenting with that, but I just haven't done as much. But I think that would be a really cool way to fix up an old piece of furniture.
Yeah, it would. Very unique idea.
Now I have done my sister some years back had her kitchen redone, and I made a whole bunch of little glass, essentially like a pendant, like small pieces, and she had those worked into the tile in her backsplash in her kitchen.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. That's unique. Did she use a certain kind of glass in particular, or you just made a choice?
Well, you know, I really primarily like to work with the borosilicate glass,
Mm-hmm.
but I certainly do soft glass and make beads with that. But primarily, I like working with the borosilicate. I just have always loved the feel of it, and it moves a little differently, and the color palette is just a little bit different.
Yes.
And there are just different possibilities with each.
And it's a silent process as well.
Well, you know, one of the things that is my favorite thing to do, music is a really big part of this for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost always have headphones on when I'm working.
Okay.
And it is that it can be very, you know, if you've got one piece, you may spend half an hour or 45 minutes on a pendant or a marble, which is strictly right here in the torch, and it can get pretty hot. But
Yeah. Yeah, the only noise we're hearing right now is from this, this is filtering the heat
vent hood.
through the ventilation here.
Yeah. Now, as you can see, I pulled this out. I did kind of a decoration on the end of it, and now I'm melting it back down, which is tightening that pattern and bringing that pattern in so that you can kind of start to see what will be the front of our pendant.
It's taking on a life. Look at that.
You can see as the cools a little bit, you can start to see the color. But now if I leave this out of the flame too long, it's going to crack.
Oh, really?
And that's something you always have to deal with glass. It's called thermal shock. So if you get it hot too quick, or if it's hot and you get it cool too quickly, it will if it doesn't crack or explode, it definitely at least leaves a lot of stress in the glass and makes it more breakable later. And so I try to keep things as evenly heated as possible when I work in the torch. But then that's really the process with the kiln, is that it is hot enough to let the structure of the glass kind of realign and strengthen itself, but not hot enough for it to become molten where you would lose your design. And so you leave it in there for a certain amount of time, depending on how thick the piece of glass is, and then you ramp down slowly to room temperature until you get past what they call the strain point. And that will leave you with a piece of glass that it's still glass and still breakable, but it's as strong as it can be.
Okay.
And a lot of things that are, that I've experienced, having the situation of also owning a bead store and selling glass beads, a lot of the less expensive lampwork type beads or flamework beads that come from other countries are not always annealed properly. And so it just makes them much more breakable, where you just set something down on the counter and it just, and just breaks in half.
So what are you doing right now? You're adding more glass to it?
What I'm doing is I'm keeping this hot, but not molten, because it is at the point I want it to be at right now. I don't want it to move anymore. And then I've introduced a piece of clear lower down in the flame, and I'm going to get a big glob of clear built up, and then I'm going to put that on top of this, and then that will be the lens or the front of the pendant.
Okay. You're like a maestro over there.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Conductor. How long have you been a member of the guild?
Well, I know I'm a fellow member.
Oh, okay, you're a fellow.
But
that means
I
you've
don't.
gone through rigorous adjudications.
I do not know exactly the year offhand without thinking about it.
Okay.
We've enjoyed it so much, the time's gone by in a flash.
Nice. Is some of your artwork currently at the guild gift shop or
it is
gallery?
not. It is not. But one of the things that has the last few years been a real struggle for me with my business, and I'm sure a lot of guild members, at different stages in life have trouble keeping up. But I have run this store with my mom for over 20 years, and she's in her 80s now, and this was her retirement job to start with over 20 years ago. And so the last couple of years she's actually become really retired, and so it leaves a lot more on me here in the store. And so a lot of times what has suffered is my time with my craft and my time with work. And so one of my big goals is reclaiming my time and getting back over here and having enough to put some things in at the craft center. I also love to make get to do start doing some shows again. We used to go and do a lot of shows.
Okay.
And just have not been doing as much.
That takes a lot of time to get everything prepared
It
to
does.
put in
And I
a
think
show.
A lot of people, customers don't realize that, you've got your time with your art and the time it takes for you to produce it. But when you go to shows, you're adding a whole nother layer of work. The load and unload and pack and unpack and displaying and all that, and it's not easy. Not easy to do shows.
I bet no one has ever said to you, I bet I could do that.
All the time.
Do
All
they
the time.
really?
Sure. And they can, but like with anything, there's a lot of in between. It's like, can I play the piano? Yeah, you could play the piano. Go for it. There's a lot of time and practice, experience to get to a point where you can make it look easy.
Yeah.
So what I want is to have this clear at a much higher temperature than the piece I have underneath it. Because, you know, I want the clear to move and come down around the top of this, but I don't want what's underneath to distort and move as much as the clear. So I'm trying to get that end of it much hotter.
Okay.
So much about working with glass in a flame is really about temperature control and gravity, because, you know, obviously only the glass that is molten will move. And so, you know, you're constantly trying to keep, you know, one part hot, one part cool, and you have to, you know, everything is about temperature. So a lot of that just comes from hours of working in the torch.
So I've come to the understanding that craft oftentimes is what the item is referred to as a craft, but there is crafting of the item. So you are crafting this into the design that you want it to be, and it takes time and years to learn how the elements involved work together or don't work together. That's important as well.
You know, I took my brother and my niece and I did one of those sampler nights and did the blacksmithing, and I think the metal is a lot like glass. I mean,
Yes.
you know, cold metal doesn't move. You have to keep, you know, you have to, and a lot of it is just judging temperature, and you can explain it, but it just takes the experience and the time to be able to look at a piece and know how it's going to move.
That's right.
I imagine that woodworkers can look at a piece of wood and have an idea of how it's going to cut. You know? That's why I think a lot of times, you know, it's so important to be in love with the process, because the only way to get good is to spend a lot of time working the process.
Yes. And for the hobbyists out there, most of the craftsmen do not use glue. We really craft the artwork, and it takes rigor, and it takes time, and it's an understanding of how the elements come together. Seeing this process is just incredible.
No, he makes this look so easy.
He really
And
does.
I can't work with this kind of glass at all because it's so stiff. I mean, he makes it look so easy, and it is not. Just keeping it round that way is difficult.
Yeah.
Or keeping your shape true.
That's true, yeah. Then understanding how he wants the colors to come out and work together.
I wish we had some examples. He does some where he fumes silver and captures the fumes in the glass.
Yes.
That's a whole
This is a
other
piece that I've got.
amazing thing.
I've got a piece of silver attached to the end that I've melted onto the end. You can see it, and this is just a piece of clear glass. So the coloring on the end of this is all from the silver.
Okay.
And so I will fume that sometimes onto clear or a colored glass, and then put clear on top of it to trap it in there and create a design or pattern that way. One of the things that I like to do is I figured out how to sign my work, and so one of the ways that I do that is with a titanium pen, but the way I prefer to do it is with these. And what this is a little letter cane where I've taken and built a letter B, and then I stretch that down into a rod, and then I use a pair of clippers and I cut chips off of that rod. And so each one of these little chips has the letter B in it. And that's how I sign my work.
Oh, I see it now. My glaucoma wasn't allowing me to see it, but looking at it through the camera, I can see the letter B.
So I will take one of these, and I'm going to set it down on my graphite, and then I'm going to get my pendant ready. And then I'm gonna press that into the back. And then I'm going to cover that over with clear.
Oh. You know, that fly just landed on your hand. He had a lot of nerve.
He's got a, you know, there have been many times, especially when I've done this outdoors,
Yes.
Or at nighttime, where if I've got the torch going, bugs just dive bomb into the torch and fall out and die. It happens.
Oh my gosh.
They, you know, the moth drawn to the flame, right?
Yeah. That's too funny. That's a backstory. I always ask the artists about their signature, what distinguishes their work from other people's work, and I enjoyed just seeing you show us how you went about doing that.
Well, for a long time I didn't sign my work. And, you know, after I had been doing it a few years, it dawned on me that that was a horrible mistake. And one of the things I try to do too is to take pictures of everything, because I stop and think about it. Well, maybe even in a situation like this where I may want to share pictures of my work, some of the most beautiful, coolest things I'm most proud of that I've ever made, I sold them and they're gone and I don't even have a picture.
Yes.
And so that's something I would definitely give advice to anybody getting started, is to always do that. If you stick with it, there'll come a time where you, of course, I have had customers bring me pieces they bought when I first got started, and they'll bring in to show me, and I look at them and I'm kind of like, you know, but we all start somewhere.
We have to start somewhere, yes.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. So you're still adding a little bit of that.
Well, what we're going to do now, we've got the bee on there, and we've got our design finished, and so now I'm going to put a small glass loop on the top, and that's going to be how this pendant will hang. And so I'm going to create another temporary handle here that is purposefully a bad connection, so that when I'm ready I can pop it off like that.
Pop
so
it off one onto the other. And the color changed.
Well, it's black and white, and so as the heat dissipates, it's no longer glowing. You know?
Okay.
And so now I'm going to heat up that front, which is the lens or the front of the pendant, and smooth off that little spot where the other handle was attached. Okay, so now what we're going to do is put a small loop at the top, and let's see.
lot of heat.
Yes.
Was that a way to help you measure how big you want it to hold?
No, well, yes and no. I'm not really measuring so much as I'm just shaping.
Okay.
And so I want my glass to be, you know, it's kind of like creating a weld. I want to create a really strong connection here and make sure that the glass is completely fused together. And but I also want to have a nice shape to the loop. And of course, I can, you know, set the size of that. And I usually try to make them pretty big so that if someone's already got a chain or a cord, that the loop's big enough to just kind of slide on there. But so I want them to be kind of universal, but I don't want the loop to be humongous.
Yes.
You know, some designs the loop could even be the focal part of the whole thing, but on this one I just really want it to not be noticeable, but to be functional.
Mm-hmm. And while you're doing that, I'm going to grab one of your cards. So people can know how to get in touch with you. And you're on Facebook as well?
I am. I'm on Facebook as Bankston Glassworks. And I try to post pictures, and if I can get to a point where we're going to doing some shows again, I'll post that info there as well.
Okay.
All right. Normally this goes straight in the kiln, but I'm going to lay it right here for a second so you can kind of show the finished pendant.
It's beautiful. Nice.
That's the back.
And that's the back, and that's where your
The back even looks pretty good on this one.
It really does. Excellent. And your initials, your B is on the back. Is that correct?
Right. That's normally how I mark them. Either that, or there is what they call a titanium pen you can sign glass with, and it's really just a small piece of titanium, and you can write on glass with it. It's amazing, and it stays there.
So it's in the kiln now, and how long will it be in there?
I can leave it going until I fill it up, but if I was to stop it now for this one piece, it would probably take, I would probably guess 3 or 4 hours to bring it down.
Okay. Oh, really?
Yeah,
glass
it needs
stays
time.
hot a long time.
It needs time. With borosilicate glass, the strain point is, I believe it's around 600 degrees, and so you have to come slowly down to that. But once you get past that, it can go a little bit more quickly.
This has been fabulous.
Well, thank you.
I really appreciate it. I've learned so much, and I've learned a great appreciation for fine art crafting. Thank you.
Thank you.